to our next workshop, which is the Recovery Fund Update and Discussion. Now, this is going to sort of, as alluded to earlier today in terms of our meeting, but take it away, Gary. You're here. I saw you doing your hair before. Where are you? There you are. Okay. Excellent. Welcome back. Take it away.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Look, I'll just try and share my screen, and hopefully it's in there somewhere. Is that working?
Yeah.
Cool. I'll just okay. Full screen. Right. So thanks again. Following on from this morning, just really to come back and just discuss where you want us to head to from here with the Recovery Fund. Just a little bit of information about that. Note about what we've achieved to date with the fund. Note that obviously things have changed somewhat, and look at some of the options and give you lots of time to have questions and discussion about where you want to head with the remaining fund. Yeah, so you allocated $795,000 through the arbitrage fund. We were in the middle of the lockdown last year to cater for a recovery. With that, you agreed to the funding of the 2 community advisors, which Gina and Corinne have now obviously been in the role for a year. Created the contestable fund of $400,000, and also increased funding in the District Promotions Community Events Fund and some additional funds for marketing in the district. And again, throughout 2020 and 21, we've been through various outbreaks and various alert levels, but through that period, what were some pretty dire economic predictions in March and April last year didn't really eventuate, and in a lot of areas there was some very high economic activity. So with respect to the fund, the $400,000 fund, there's a working group that was created. Membership, Councillor O'Regan and Stolwick, Shane Taruki as the iwi Relations Advisor, Ronald Kirkwood from Trust Waikato, two community sector leaders, I think, and I can't quite recall the details of those, and also two iwi leaders as well. So that group only met to do the first tranche of allocation last year, and I think that was November last year that first tranche was allocated. So we allocated $141,000 to five recipients, with unallocated funds remaining of $258,000. That the funding for the 5 successful applicants, Cambridge Community House, $105,000 for additional counselling and social work resource. Ngāti Karaki Kahukura had a wellness expo. Ngāti Apakura looking at a nursery feasibility project, and Te Awamutu Citizens Advice got some funding for some extra staff resource, and a further $1,000 for Christmas cheer in Cambridge. So as we said, very much changing times into the Delta outbreak, and what's getting on for 12 weeks of various forms of lockdown. The community psychological fatigue, increase in mental health needs is flowing out of that. And as we talked about this morning, quite a growing divide across communities. And supply chain challenges as well, which will be ongoing.
Madam Chair, can I just ask Gary a question going back? Is somebody going to tell us how the funds have gone, what the expectations of was them being successful, non-successful? Are they still in progress, please?
Yep. So we have had accountability reports back on those. I think Cambridge Community House has fulfilled its what it was trying to achieve with the counselling, with the counselling resources it was got in. Ngāti Karaiki Kahukura had a successful expo. Ngāti Apakura, with their feasibility study, while it didn't, I think the opportunity they were looking at didn't prove feasible. They are now looking at something aligned to that. So while that, while that feasibility study didn't actually produce the result they were hoping for, it has sort of led them to another path, which they are interested in pursuing. Citizens' advice, well, it's additional hours. It's helped them get on top of things particularly from a managerial point of view, and $1,000 extra to the Christmas cheer in Cambridge, which kind of speaks for itself.
Thanks.
So
Gary.
that's in a nutshell.
Thank you.
Gary, could I, and may I, through you, Madam Chair, may I ask, the growing divide within and across communities, what does that sentence mean?
Well, I think it's an observation of what you're potentially seeing at the moment, that whereas probably in the first lockdown you had a community that was probably more, it was part of the team of 5 million, and okay. I think this time we are probably seeing people, frustrations rising in different sectors of the community.
With the process, do you mean with the process of the inflicted rules that we've had put on us? Is that what you mean?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
That plus just changing alert levels, changing systems of alert level, all that sort of thing. Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, Gary, can I just back that up a bit?
Sure.
Honestly, Hazel, I would just say there's a huge gap between those retailers that can open and those that can't open and can't trade and are finding themselves in financial difficulty. And there's a huge amount of people in Te Awamutu with small businesses that are in very big difficulties at the moment, unable to trade effectively, unable to earn an income, and unable to, although they've got the so-called wage subsidy, it only pays 60 or 70% of your wage. So your operating costs still carry on. And many of these people have used up all their resources. And we are looking at quite a major problem, especially as interest rates start hiking up.
Oh, yes, and I'm aware of the businesses that are closing down.
Absolutely.
Okay, so really just wanted to put, and test with you your thinking around the remaining funds, the remaining 258,000. We've got option one, just to continue with how you intended to allocate it previously. The second option, which looked at internally, is potentially reducing or applying those funds to, for example, fees and charges that might apply to particularly businesses in those areas. So looking at environmental health, Health Act related, and ones that food selling, businesses, that's potentially an area you could apply those funds. Or option 3, just to, as Liz talked about this morning, looking at how we could apply those funds externally, looking at other areas. Potentially it's in community safety or business support programs and the like, but there would be myriad other ways that you might want to spend that. So just in a bit more detail, option 1, so you have actually delegated responsibility to handing that to allocating that funding out to the working group. So that delegation still sits with them. So we would be looking at still using that group to assess any grants. Then now the second tranche was anticipated being by invitation only, so it would be wouldn't be advertising. We'd just be using the community advisors to look at potential applicants through that process. Through the the original criteria, social well-being was weighted more highly than the other well-beings, and that was, I think, seen in the makeup of the working group as well.
Sorry, Jim, you had your hand up?
On mute, Jim.
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair. Look, it wasn't that I was wanting to ask specific questions on where Gary was up to, but it was just reassessing the point or re-stressing the point I made this morning, is we haven't got enough money to help the amount of businesses that are struggling in terms of grants. And this is going to be ongoing until we get everybody vaccinated that is going to get vaccinated, so that we can open up our economy permanently. So I suppose my general comment is, and without knowing if there is maybe 1 or 2 specifics that we want to look at, but generally speaking, the only way to get out of this mess is to get this vaccination rate up. So, and I haven't got any bright ideas on how to actually encourage particularly the young Maori that have been identified that are not getting vaccinated. But we've really just got to, for the good of the whole community, we've got to get that vaccination rate up. So my feeling is whatever money we've got left, we should be using somehow to promote that vaccination rate.
So how far off their rate are we, Jim?
Look, just couldn't tell you off the top of my head, Hazel, but it's, our overall vaccination rate is 89, 90, just over 90 in Cambridge, I think. So in terms of the overall vaccination rate for Waipa, it's pretty good, but we've still got the pockets of Maori that are very low. And I think I figure something like 40% of the hospitalizations actually are in that younger Maori age group, because they're just not getting vaccinated. So unless we can get that vaccination rate up, it's just going to hold up the recovery, not only of the Waikato Area Health Board, but the whole country.
Okay.
Just, I guess, in response, the government has and continues to pour quite a lot of funding into that area. I haven't heard that lack of funds has been I guess, hindered them in that work to date, but it is something we can investigate anyway going forward, if you'd like.
Andrew, did you have something to add? Andrew, then Phil, then Hazel.
Thanks, Susan. Yeah, look, I would totally support using some of that money for that purpose, both for the good of our economy and getting retail stores open. No one more than me would want that to happen, but also because there is, I mean, the fact that we've got a disproportionate number of Māori unvaccinated and occupying our hospitals is a failure on the part of our, whether you call it government or our society or community as a whole, to some extent. And anything we can do to redress that has got to be worthwhile. Unfortunately, like Jim, I don't have any great ideas about how to go about it, but anything we can do is worth looking at doing.
Okay.
Just on it, and through the Madam Chair, through the DHB, I know firsthand is about just over 300 DHB staff members that aren't vaccinated, haven't been vaccinated. There's a bit over 5,000 in total staff members, that is. So about just over 300 haven't been vaccinated yet, or refused to be vaccinated. So human resources is a big issue for them too.
And if am I allowed to speak now?
Yep.
Oh, thanks, Susan. And Gary, I would really encourage you to find out how John Tamahiri is now going to advance with getting all of the younger Māori people vaccinated. That only came out on the news this morning. I knew he'd been putting up quite an argument. They had to take them to the High Court to get what he needed. He's got it, and now they can get cracking. And I suggest that, and as I said before, they're going about it in a way that is acceptable to Māori people. I think that the way that it's being done before that probably didn't attract them very much. But John Tamahiri has got a program coming out, Gary. So let's hook into that one, and he's almost guaranteeing that they'll get 100% success if they can do it their way.
Take your point, Hazel. Just also, just remind you all that we are supporting the DHB in this. That they are the provider of that service.
Oh, and haven't we heard about that too? I mean, what a great success, or otherwise, that has been. I sometimes think they're missing the point.
Anyway,
if you just want to, how about if we just carry on with with Gary's presentation, and perhaps it can throw up a bit more discussion here at the end.
So just in relation to that first round of grants, I think one of the things that was difficult to identify was kind of that link back to a recovery, because the recovery didn't actually turn out how we expected it to anyway. So that was always a difficulty. I think we put recovery into the community board grants as well as a criteria, and again, it wasn't always easy to make that linkage back to recovery. So we have a limited number of candidates identified going forward. So looking at things like spend and programs around increasing spend and visitation for CBD businesses. Again, that's probably not weighted as highly as the more social criteria under the current criteria we have for the fund. Looking at talent and skills, an employment campaign around that. So I guess linked in some ways to the Merrill task force work that's been done elsewhere. Christmas hamper again for Te Awamutu, similar to what was done in Cambridge last year. There's an iwi planting initiative that we've been talking with one iwi group about, and around play therapy support to transition to school. I think a lot of I guess anxiety in kids, both ends of the spectrum of education at the moment. So seeing if there's any way we can support that with the limited funding that we do have. So that was looking at option one. Option two, we've looked at potentially, is there something we could subsidise in terms of charges that we put on businesses, particularly looking at the environmental health area. It's just be a small benefit. We'd be looking at sort of like Health Act related businesses. I think their fee is about $140 per annum. Some of the bigger, the food program businesses, they are more in the sort of 410. So we could use that funding. We could remit those alcohol on and off licenses. We could probably cover all of those within the fund that there is today for 1 year, if that was something you wanted to do. Relatively easy to administer that, with the exception that some will have already paid their fee for this year. We'd have to look at how we address that. So that's a second option for you. And really the third, and we'll leave, I think Liz this morning said, put your thinking caps on. What are there other external ways that you would potentially like to use these funds? There'd be things like community safety have been mooted. But again, it's a chance for you to respond more directly to what you see are the consequences of the pandemic. So those are three areas. And really it's open it to you for discussion of those, and as Liz said, just putting the ideas out there that you might want to pursue.
Thanks, Gary. Liz, you've got your hand up. Get those creative juices going.
There we go. Thank you. Hey, look, in the lunch break, I had a good talk with Kelly from the Cambridge Chamber, because I connected with her yesterday on, as I said earlier, a Zoom call with lots of hospitality providers in Cambridge. So I wanted just to sort of process and ask her what her thoughts were after having a bit of overnight to think about it. So for me, there probably are two areas that I think we've suffered the most. One is the hospitality area, which is a really easy one to pick off, because they're all mostly local, I guess, found in our CBDs and in our towns. And there is a great initiative that Kelly's going to help drive and support, pulling together people who are in hospitality and how we might extend the outdoor eating areas. So we've seen it in Paris, we've seen it in the UK, all around Europe, how council helped extend the outdoor eating space so that we were essentially picnicking outside, but by utilising car parks on the main streets, by utilising sidewalks, empty car lots area or large car parking spaces, and kind of turning them into outdoor restaurants so that we're still socially distancing. And that has worked really, really well overseas. And I think that's a really great initiative. Our role in that would be that we would need to extend on licensing areas, outdoor spaces that need to be on licensed, which I'm sure is going to be a huge headache for somebody. But also we have event centres like Karapiro, Mystery Creek, that have lots of tables and chairs that are sitting in storage rooms. So I actually think there's a lot of things that we could probably do around that to kind of enable it. But it would require, like I say, local government, our support in terms of being able to extend some of the areas that people could eat in. The other really big space on that, so the other big area I think that really needs to be looked at is our safety. And I really support the idea of putting some of our money as well into two existing agencies that already operate, and that's ComSafe in both Cambridge and Te Awamutu. They are on the ground. They are already mobilised. They have vehicles, and I just think that giving them a little bit more support would mean that our residents can feel safe. We know, I just got calls on the weekend, there's a lot of that fly tipping still going on. call yesterday from Alan Easton down at Horror. Lots of guys doing donuts. What's that, guys? Could be girls too. So we've just got a lot of that stuff still going on. And our CCTV cameras, that kind of, works in really well too. So I'm kind of looking, I think, kind of a double approach. So some of that money towards that hospitality enabling, our cafes and restaurants, but also when you bring people into town, you're also assisting the retail. While they're in town, hopefully they'll shop as well. So I think we'll have a bit of a flow-on effect from there. So yeah, just my two ideas.
Yeah, thanks, Liz. Fantastic ideas, and I wholeheartedly agree in terms of the safety issues at the forefront of my mind at the moment. Claire, then Roger.
Yeah, thanks. I'd really like to see the funds used, to be targeted to do with COVID recovery. So not necessarily just general wellbeing. Like I thought that funding that was done the first time around, I wouldn't want to see the same mix again. Something looking at businesses. So I'm pretty supportive of what Liz has said about expanding outdoor eating areas. I've read about that as well, and I'd just be concerned that we'd need to do something to help other businesses so that we're not just helping hospitality, although I realise hospitality has been really hard hit, but there's been a lot of other businesses, as Lou has said, that haven't been able to trade at all, and I think could we support them as well in making the most of the initiatives that the government's putting forward, like there's something called Digital Boost where businesses can get a lot of help to get an online presence so that they can get their improved, with online sales. And I don't know how many businesses are actually taking that up. And then also I'm thinking about school leavers and people from university who are graduating, because they are going to be really struggling to find work or any new job. And so, Gary, you mentioned the Mayoral Task Force for Jobs, and there was something on the news about that actually. I don't exactly know how it works, but if we could be looking at that to help our school leavers and our new grads to find some kind of employment, I'd certainly be in favour of that.
Yes, it's interesting you raised that point, Claire. I've got a son obviously coming back from university, and a very dear friend of his, or good mate of his, who's Australian. He can't go home because he's not guaranteed re-entry into New Zealand. So I'm going to have an extra body in the house, and I can't, neither of them have got any guaranteed employment because all the places that they with lining up are all just too uncertain right now. So it's a real worry for a lot of those because they're not eligible for any grants or assistance between the end and beginning of the academic year. So
and look, I did have a look at what happened like in the with people trying to enter the workforce, and there were a lot of internships set up, and so I don't know whether or not the Mayoral Task Force for Jobs is doing that. So I guess that's why I sort of put that plea out to get a bit more info. But I'd really love to see some kind of initiative where even if these kids or young people can't get sort of paid work as we'd normally know it, but at least they're getting experience, at least they're getting exposed to the workplace and getting themselves out there and seen, so that perhaps some other employment might come of it.
Yeah, good idea, Claire. Philip, then Lo.
I thought it was me next, Susan.
Oh, sorry, Roger, Philip, then Lo. I'm missing the hands. I have to write a list. It's
definitely.
Thanks, Susan. I actually really support Mayor Jim in what he says about really encouraging our vaccination rate and to get that up as soon as possibly can. Now, we know that the government have made available to iwi quite a considerable resource. But I think, what I'd like to see us doing is perhaps helping to coordinate that response in actually getting some of that targeted resource, and then maybe putting some of our resources to help enable some of the actions that could come out of that. One of the things that I think we've we really do need to do. We've got those last week's figures, which I've just sent back around to you all, but we know how much we've got to gain in terms of second vaxxers and first vaxxers. And I think we really need to set some targets. If we could work with iwi and just say, right, let's have some events locally to really encourage both first and increasing second vaccinations. And I'm just looking at it here. You know, if we had another 2,500 2,500 second vaxxers in Cambridge, that would jump our fully vaccinated rate up by 10%, which would be a great achievement for us. So I think the resource is there. Why not see if we can help coordinate that to encourage and let's get recent, regular figures from the DHB so we can see how we're progressing. So every week we get a new update on what our figures are for TA and for Cambridge, so we can keep promoting that we need to get that pushed up. And that's, I think, the fastest road to recovery.
Can I respond to that?
I'll hold on just a minute, Liz. Just today, the government's announced a $23.5 million package to support community-led Māori vaccination campaigns. And it's to go towards 8 Māori organisations and iwis aimed at boosting Māori vaccination rates through the new $120 million Māori Communities COVID-19 fund. So there is a lot of money rattling around out there in this space. And as much as I admire your thinking, Roger, and Mayor Jim, in terms of that's our problem, that's where we can, if we get that little piece of the jigsaw linked, everything will flow on. My sense is it's probably not our space with our small bit of money, given the big guns that are coming in. If it's iwi driven, iwi supported, I'm all for it, 100%. But there is a lot of money out there already. Liz, sorry, no, going back to my list here, otherwise I'll be growled at. Philip, Lou, then Liz. You have to take your number.
Yeah, no, I was just responding back to Roger, that's all.
You respond, Liz, quickly.
Yeah, I was just going to say, for every video that we did around pro-vaccination, and I'm very pro-vaccination, I would have got 5 phone calls, people asking for us to respect their choice. And we're going to hit that space if we keep, I guess, and I have to respect that there is a lot of people I never thought, but there are a lot of people who don't want to be vaccinated, and we're going to hit that space very shortly. I don't know if I want to go there. I feel we have to be respectful at some point.
Yeah, good point. I was at the same discussion as Liz was yesterday, and as everyone's saying, hospitality is getting really hit, and event organisers too. But Peter Nation was at that meeting, and he also mentioned it's all the supporting businesses that support events, the caterers and all those businesses it's just non-existent as well. So hospitality on the main street, on the high street, is getting hit really hard, but it's also those supporting businesses for events and things like that are on their knees as well. There's nothing there for them. So that's another sector that needs to be looked at and considered as well, which is part of hospitality, I suppose, but a different type of hospitality.
Thanks, Philip. Lou, you've been waiting patiently. You're muted, Lou.
Sorry. I totally agree with Liz. We did get some responses, and I got 4 or 5 quite quickly that it was their choice to get vaccinated or not. So that was quite and as Liz said, quite surprising who I had to. I'd just like to mention that it's not just the hospitality industry. We have things, ridiculously enough, hairdressers and hair and barbers are all locked up for some reason. We've got gyms locked up. They can't operate at all. They're sitting there and we've got about 5, I think, at the moment, or 5 or 6 gyms in Te Awamutu, all locked down, can't operate, whatever.
Come on, Lou, we've got classes. My Tim's doing classes outdoors. I went this morning.
Yeah, I do classes outdoors, but it's not at the gym, okay? And I'm not a class man, as you know. But I'm just saying that it limits their operation. So all of these people are suffering quite badly at the same time. I totally agree with Liz. I think CompSafe was a great idea. I really do. I think that CompSafe does an excellent job of patrolling our streets, and we do have an upsurgence at the moment of just random acts of, random acts of violence and random acts of just ordinary graffiti, etc. So I think we can actually pick up on that, because this is all coming down from the fact of unemployment being locked down and the frustrations.
Please do something about hairdressers.
Sorry, what was that, Hazel?
She wants something done about hairdressers.
Please do something about hairdressers.
Okay, so Mike and then Andrew, you've got your hand up too.
I don't have that problem.
Yeah, it's been interesting to listen to the discussion and some really good ideas banded around. I guess what maybe we haven't talked about is when we get out of this and the sort of relief that people are going to feel, and maybe some of this could be kept, some of this money could be kept aside for a little bit of not a celebration at the end, but a little bit of giving back through some of our public facilities. And I mean, two obvious ones obviously are the two main pools on each side of a district, and it's sort of probably a little bit of money go around, but I'm sure there's some others too that we could actually just give back, that when we get out of this, hopefully it's in December, that we actually just give something back. Then that's around that well-being and around bringing families together. And I'm sure, Sally, there'll be other facilities that, that I'm just throwing it in the mix, that, your screensavers are one of them, that we could give back to the community and say, hey, look, here's a free day, a free pass, whatever, for you and your whānau, you and your family, and come up with a range of places that they could go to somehow.
Thank you, Mike. I've been thinking a bit about the retailers and talking with a few in town in Te Awamutu, and the good old buy local campaigns are always quite good. We tend to forget, having been locked up for this length of time, that you just go on online and you click something and then it eventually appears from somewhere. We need to be gearing our eyes a little bit closer to home and make a real choice to support people that are local. I know, as I said earlier, we've been trying to do our best, and for the dairy, I speak a little bit, I guess, from some of the farmers and dairy industry around, we've been really fortunate and privileged to be able to continue working under both lockdowns, and I feel that's incumbent upon us to sort of share the love a little bit with our local retailers and our hospitality people when they eventually open up. We make an effort to try and keep it local, I think. So, and if we can gear a lot of our messaging around those notions, I think it wouldn't go astray. Philip was waiting. Oh, Andrew first, then Philip.
Thanks, Susan. And surprisingly enough, I heartily endorse the buy local campaigns. Who would have thought? Just going back to the fund, it's not necessarily about spending money, but I really would like to see us being active in promoting, as who was it, Hazel? Yes, saying about jumping on board any initiative that John Tamahiri's putting out that makes sense. I'd like to see us just, promoting that area to, for PR reasons as well as the practical ones of getting the vaccinations up. And Liz, I hear what you're saying about the videos and that, and the kickback, and you're quite right. There's a lot of people out there who are not going to get vaccinated no matter what. But I don't mind getting those phone calls. If we get, I personally think that the people who aren't getting vaccinated are really exposing themselves to significant risk, and anything we can do to change even one person's mind, I'm happy to do.
Yep. So we had a Christmas parade committee meeting last week, and as you all know, Christmas parade is cancelled this year because you have to be at level 1, and that's not going to happen, unlikely to happen. not going to happen. But it was really quite clear from everybody in that group that we want to do something to give some Christmas cheer and get people's a smile on their face and everything like that, and work with retailers and Kelly from the chamber and things like that. So we've got some really great ideas that we're working with various stakeholders and everything, and light up Cambridge, both in town, in the businesses and in the streets as well. So just to give some Christmas cheer and make people feel a bit happier about things, because it's been, as everyone's saying, everyone knows it's been really tough. So although the Christmas parade's not going ahead, we've got some really great ideas that will come out over the next week or so too. So, yeah.
Have you got anybody else waiting, Susan? But
where you go.
I'm listening here and thinking, hang on a minute, folks. We're going to lift the line a bit for the shutdowns, and what's going to happen is that there's going to be a high number of positives come in, and it was all very well illustrated. I think was it last night or whenever I was listening to the TV, that once we start practicing opening the door a bit, it's going, because it's on its sweep. It's on a sweep through New Zealand. That's what's going to happen. That's what's happened with the other pandemics that we've had as well. So things are going to might get a little bit worse. Who was it who said, let's have a party? Mike. I sort of wonder if we shouldn't have a massive celebration, if we can, by Christmas, and just have a street party to celebrate, provided it's safe to do, and that we're not going to spread the bug any further. Because I don't know how about everybody else feels, but by God, I'm closest to the biggest depression I have ever felt in my life, because I can't go out and join in things. But I have to admire the shops like Mitre 10, and I just raced out there at lunchtime to go and get my granddaughter, who's here with me today, some lunch out at Vian's. And here they are. They've set their shop up, so you just choose what you want from the window. They're still having an income, and there was a huge lineup of cars. So those people ought to be celebrated, I think, for their initiative in keeping their shops open. Well, I appreciate Andrew probably can't say to people, well, I'll go and, you can't do it that way. But there have been quite a few businesses that have showed some initiative and been able to keep on with their business. And I'm wondering if a celebration, that's what I'd love to do. I'd love to go crazy at the end of this and say, and I'd leave my gates open for a month just to prove that it was over. And I know there's lots of people around that feel like that we've obeyed the rules, we've not argued with anything, we've just done it. But by gosh, we're paying a price.
Hazel, I think to perhaps wind up a little bit, I wonder if, Steve, did you want to just talk to some of the things you're looking at bringing to our next service delivery meeting? You've floating around there, Steve Tripp. I'm thinking more about the business community and assistance there, and some of the things that we might be able to do to assist them. Is he not there?
Yeah, I'm here. So service delivery on the 16th, I'm bringing Chris Wilkinson from First Retail to talk about recovery and resurgence back into the CBD. He'll talk about what other towns are doing kind of nationally, and global trends, some of the things that Liz talked about. The problem with our shutdowns is in 4 weeks, people have changed behaviours, and we need them to revert to shopping locally and coming back to town. Some people have kind of permanently left, and some anchor shops are no longer anchor shops in the CBD. So things need a help to kind of restart again, and that might be little promotion campaigns like Comms did with some of this money last time. Don't forget about us. We've lost the drive market from Auckland. We need to develop other replacement drive markets. We need to get our people back into our CBDs. We've got about 75 million retail leakage per CBD to Hamilton. And there's a new localism, as Susan said. People want to spend locally, and they want to come and occupy, community spaces in the community and the public realm in our CBDs, and they want to do it safely and outside. So this ain't going to happen all by itself. So that's why next month I'm bringing First Retail. We need to give pace to coming back online. Fortunately, it's coming up summer, so we can be outside, but we can't just meander through up until Christmas, because everybody will be online and shopping elsewhere, and the people that are in our CBD are kind of going to struggle to get critical mass, and our community wants places to go. So that'll be the subject of service delivery Tuesday 16th, I think, and it will be fabulous.
Yeah, look, thanks for that, Steve. That's kind of a reasonably large chunk of this puzzle, I think. Liz, you've got your hand up. Oh, sorry, Steve.
Yeah,
There you go.
Okay, no, I was just going to ask Steve, hey, just so that we can maximise the value of bringing First Retail to us, and if everyone's happy, it would be really great to have our Chambers of Commerce in the discussion, so they have the ability to ask questions as well. Might as well challenge the speaker that's coming our way. Is that something everyone would be happy with, even if it's just one from Cambridge, one from Te Awamutu, but I just sort of feel a direct voice from the chamber would be great in the forum for that 16th of November.
That makes huge sense.
Yeah, I agree with
Roger.
that.
Yeah, thanks, Sue. Just to change tack just slightly, and it may be a question first, Gary, that you could answer. The additional counselling that was funded through Cambridge Community House, what period was that for? Because I think that there's going to be an increasing demand out there for counselling and support. And the second question, we funded that for Cambridge, but I don't see any funding for TA. And I would suggest that exactly the same need is over there in TA, and perhaps they don't have the benefit of having a large coordination entity like Community House to actually enable and facilitate that. So should we be looking at an allocation of that kind of resource into TA to provide that support for those that are challenged within our community?
So a couple of things there. Certainly the allocation was made late last year. It was just, I think that has been, I'm pretty sure that contract has been fulfilled, or that allocation. So I don't think it's continuing. I'll have to double check on that. We have, you're absolutely right. There will be the same need, if not even greater, in Te Awamutu. Finding a provider in that space with capacity to provide that service has been the issue, and I think that's right across the mental health realm. That psychological services are really under the pump, and there isn't a lot of capacity there to fill that gap. But we can have a look at that when we come back to you, just to see if there is any wiggle room there.
And with Cambridge, even if you're looking at this, say the next calendar year, that both of our centres, perhaps the consideration be for resourcing that kind of service in both centres.
Well, yes, you're potentially right, but I'm just mindful that there's $250,000 in this fund. We've talked about enabling hospitality, community safety, and vaccination as well. So I guess, you know, we can't do everything. And I'm not saying that's not
demand. Yeah, limited pot of money.
Yeah, I'm not saying that isn't, you know, a worthy thing, but just saying we can't. You know, we can try to be everything to everyone, but you know, if we only put $1 to one thing, then we're not going to achieve an awful lot.
I think there's a plan anyway. The community house have a plan around how they're going to do that, Roger.
So we'll come back to you around that anyway. Just look at specifically around the mental health.
So, Gary, are you going to take away some of these ideas and then come back again? What's the process from here?
So I was just going to wrap to summarise what I'm hearing is you don't want to continue with the grants as laid out in option 1. You didn't seem to have a lot of attraction to just rebating fees either for environmental health and the like. So we'll come back to you with a package and looking at some of the things Steve's just talked about and Liz has talked about in terms of enabling some of that outdoor dining and some of those programs, see what we can come across for both sides of the district. Community safety, I think we've got to catch up with them tomorrow, just so we'll see what we might be able to do there and see if we can get a package, and also recognising what you said about vaccination as well. See what we can sort of sensibly do in that space, but noting that we're probably not going to be able to come back to you before because that, you know, really for vaccination we're talking about the next 2 or 3 weeks as the highest priority for that. So
yeah, so if I can just add something there regarding the vaccination and supporting, obviously over the last week or 2 weeks, we're working very closely with the DHB and supporting the work that they are doing, but we're also linking with our mana whenua and iwi partners to see how we can support them and what they're doing and working with the DHB. So that is very much a priority for the work that the community advisors are doing, as well as the comms and engagement team in terms of sharing and getting those messages out as well. So that work is underway around supporting vaccinations and recognising, I suppose, the importance of that for everybody, as you have all talked about. There are some latest figures that have come through just this afternoon regarding where we're at with vaccinations. So for the Waikato region, we're sitting at 86.7% for first dose. For Waipa, that is at 90.7%. In terms of second dose at the Waikato region, that's 72.2%, and for Waipa is sitting at 76.3%. So those figures are going up steadily. So it's about how do we support the district health board in terms of the processes that they're going through. So I think what we'll do from here is work with community advisors, obviously those links within the communities that you've all talked about, and come back with you with some ideas in terms of what projects or what opportunities there are for this fund to be utilised. So thank you for your feedback and great conversation today.
Thanks, Sally. Graham, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, thank you. I wouldn't support any money going towards the COVID. I think the government's throwing money around like a drunken sailor, and that's where the money should come. I reckon it's time for local.
Yeah.
Gary, I've got a couple of suggestions, okay. Very supportive of the group that you've got. When people apply for funds through our discretionary fund, through the community boards, and some of the ones on that slide have applied, we were very, very surprised at some of the cash reserves that some of these entities had. And we didn't give them any money because we had other priorities where they didn't have that. And I'm talking entities that showed assets of $16 million that was still wanting 15 grand from our community board. And I'm wondering whether, before we do this, whether we should, like we do with the community boards, have some accountability into what position they are in. Because after all, we're spending ratepayers' money and we need to have a focus and get best value for that. And I don't know that we can have two sets of rules for one and then the other just get rated, or whoever can put the best story up. I'd just suggest that.
Yep. So I think we've, for this particular tranche of funding, we've decided you decided you don't want to go through that grant process. So that's cool. But I think looking at the longer term, I think one of the things Debbie identified before she'd left was, there was a need to have a look at the grants schemes as well. So Sally and I are just picking up on that now and looking at it. And I guess one of the things we could look at there is, how that assessment is carried out, and looking at the financial information there as well. And Sally, is that anything to add there?
No, through the chair, nothing to add. Good overview provided, Gary.
Thank you. Lou, final word.
Just a final thing. When you're talking of vaccination, just at the moment, although we can't play, all the touch rugby tournaments are starting up at TA Sports, where they have anything up to 300 or 400, many of them young Maori people that play in that facility. And I'd say how Tapu has exactly the same, and Leamington. Should our advisors be funded or go and just tap into these people, because that's somewhere where a little bit of peer emphasis could actually influence these people. Unfortunately, they come from disparate areas, but these little touch rugby teams come in from everywhere, and perhaps that could be operational and put some, not so much money towards it, but just getting out there and promoting the actual vaccination in those areas.
Oh, we'll take that on board. Thanks,
Lou. So I think you've got a pretty good steer there from us, Gary and Sally.
Yep, that's great.
Cool. Look forward. Thank you for that, and look forward to seeing what you come up with.
Thank you.
So that moves us on then. Thank you, guys. Moves us on then to the Waipa Community Spatial Plan with Kirsty, and I see you have Vanessa there with you as well.
Yeah, kia ora koutou. Thank you, Madam Chair and councillors. The purpose of this workshop is to provide you with a brief update, to seek some feedback from you on one particular area, and then we will have a more interactive session with you next week, following as part of a workshop session also. So Vanessa's going to lead you through this presentation. I'm happy for you to ask questions probably as we move along, conscious of time, and we only have half an hour allocated. But please, happy for you to follow up with us outside of this workshop also, but we're really looking forward to further engaging with you next week. Thank you.
Thank you, Kirsty. Hi, everyone. It's been a long day, so I'm going to try to make it short and snappy for all of you. But as Kirsty just mentioned, if you have any question, please jump along. So this update is, sorry, can you see my slides properly?
Yes, we can.
Is it changing around? Okay. Going to move this around. So this presentation, I have a purpose here on the slides, is to obviously provide you with an update on the project delivery. This is coming on combination with a few other updates that we outline in a minute. It's to review our stakeholders advisory group and our approach to membership, so to get actually an input from all of you as well at some stage in that presentation. To have a very brief introduction to the draft future scenarios, because as Kirsty actually mentioned, there is a workshop that will be that has been scheduled for next week to actually go into the details of this, and I'm sure we will have actually a lengthy conversation on those as well. So this can happen next week during the workshop, and to provide you as well for an update on the engagement to date. So we're going to go through the project plan and the RASCI, which is the role and responsibility, which you have actually both received as supporting documents. Those updates for the project delivery also comes on in addition to a weekly update that you receive through the Friday mail out. And obviously it comes post this presentation actually comes post introduction of the project in previous SPNP committee workshop back in October and then September. Then we're going to go through at the matrix, as I said, for the stakeholders, the technical, the community, and our future-proof advisory group. So look at this approach, looking at the draft future scenarios again, and the working titles, the Mana Whenua engagement, and then our integration workshop with council managers and business case writers. Now, as you probably noticed from the project schedule that has been actually passed around, it is quite a complex project, and even more so has been quite dynamic in the sense that we are receiving more and more requests for engagement, and we see actually the layers of engagement kind of deepening as we go. This is so we've decided to actually have a more tactical approach to delivery of this project, with a review happening pretty much prior to every milestones. So the one that you have received, the PDF that you have received, is just an outline of the tasks that are being kind of delivered up to the Christmas period. And those will be actually reviewed early December, and we will start actually planning on the following work stream, which is actually the selection of the future scenario, the evaluation stage, the engagement stage, which will actually happen in the first quarter of next year, and obviously the drafting of the plan itself and visualization modeling. You also were provided with the RASCI matrix, which outline every key collaborator within this project and their role. So that is not new. That's something we had actually showed before, and that has been actually endorsed through our project control group as well. But one addition that you want to note is actually the quality assurance role that we've added up to it. And just that is to make sure that Kirsty, obviously, as the project owner, is receiving actually time to review the documents and the milestone deliverables, but also Gary Diet as our project sponsor to look at this and more from an independent kind of perspective as well. So we've added those roles within RASCI, and that's the only change since actually the last time that you have seen actually this matrix back in early October. Do you have any question on what was provided now, or should I move on to the stakeholders?
Let's just keep moving on, I think. Yeah. Oh no, Roger has a question. He has his hand up.
Yeah, I can't see the hands. Good.
And okay. It's just a request rather than a question.
Sure.
The RASCI matrix, could you distribute that as a separate document around to, well, send it to me, yep, so I don't have to go back and find it again?
Sure. Yes.
We'll make sure that we provide that to all of you.
Yeah, to everyone, and we could actually send it as a matrix itself. So if you have any comments to add on to it, that's something that can be done instead of having a PDF, which is quite restricted when it comes about editing it.
Thank
is
you.
That okay? Yeah. Okay. Now, on the stakeholder advisory group, as we mentioned at the last committee meeting that we had early October, our approach to our advisory group or to our stakeholder engagement actually has changed, has been tweaked As we see the technical kind of input that is required, we've decided to divide our stakeholder advisory group into 3 focused groups, subgroup, if you want. We have the technical one that we listed there, which are really looking at providing us with this prioritization of investments and activities that will need to happen within the districts over the next 30 to 50 years. We've got the community advisory group as well, stakeholder advisory group, which are ensuring that while we develop actually the plan, we retain those 4 well-beings in mind, and that the technical aspects of the spatial plan doesn't actually overtake those well-beings outcomes. And then we have future proof, obviously, which is happening on the side, which is a sub-regional partnership where we need to actually start integrating with. So there is some of those stakeholders which were already either in our technical advisory group or our committee advisory group, but we can actually reach through a better integration with future proof. So that's what we think our approach should be for the stakeholder engagement. At this stage, and I understand that you probably would have had maybe just a weekend or yesterday to kind of look at this, but is there anything we stepped out right now, something that you think is missing? Noting that the blue column are really to look at lifting that technical input of the spatial plan while we're looking at the draft future scenarios. We know, and as I had presented earlier in the year about the project timeframe, we know that the wider community consultation will happen later on around July, August, as it stands right now. Yes, Claire. Sorry.
Yeah, Vanessa, I just had some suggestions on some people or organisations that are missing.
Sure.
Yeah, well, that I'd like to see there. Like, I know you've got the Ministry of Education involved, but I'm thinking, I sort of think that we'll focus there as like primary schools and secondary schools, but I'd really like to see the university involved, and also those other tertiary providers with some sort of vocational training, or what used to be WinTech or whatever, because one of the well-beings is going to be, I think, like youth employment opportunities and growing those new industries that we know are going to be needed in the future, but we really don't know how they're going to pan out at the moment. Yeah, and so because I'd like to have their input either on the technical side or certainly more being informed. I just, because another side of it with the well-beings is that with our ageing population, we really want to encourage more young people to settle here, either raise the birth rate or make sure that they arrive later in their life and stay here. And so that's why I think it's important to have their input at sort of this level of the project.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and then another couple of areas were around climate change and what are the new industries that are going to emerge because of our efforts to reduce the effects of climate change. Now, we've got some great opportunities already in dairying industry because, it's such a strong part of our economy at the moment. But we should be trying to be ahead of the game as to how dairying is going to change to meet the climate change and emissions targets, and how can we be planning to maximize the benefit for communities with that. Personally, I think seaweed is looking really, really promising. And while we don't have a coast, I think we should be looking at partnering with some coastal councils actually, and seeing what we can provide them so they can share the benefits of that with us. Or there's other sides of climate change where an inland council is going to be beneficial. And then lastly, energy. So solar power and wind power are the things that are supposed to be powering us into the future. And while I know that the RMA, make sure that we provide for renewable energy, but I don't know what we do about doing anything with it. So I'd just like to have that as a strand in there as well.
It's really great feedback, Claire, and exactly what we were hoping to get today. We presented this as part of the reporting through to the PCG, and Liz actually said she'd like us to adopt a more innovative approach. So hence we, seeking feedback from you. And look, mindful of time. So if after we leave the workshop today, someone has a great thought about who specifically might be included, a person or an organisation, then please get in touch with Vanessa or myself.
Madam Chair, just a very quick update for Claire and the rest of you. New Zealand is ranked first out of 32 nations in terms of its climate actions. And what we want to do is separate the methane, which is a very short gas, it's been belched out of animals, into a longer term methane, because it doesn't rate. Very, very quick dispersing. That's just hot off the press from KPMG.
And there's some really encouraging research that's been done actually on it. That's why the seaweed's so important. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't like feeding out seaweed.
Just want to know how we can grow it in a freshwater environment.
Oh, yeah. Won't be seaweed, it'll be lakeweed.
Should fish swim? Can't your cows swim, Graham?
No, I haven't got enough bathing togs. Sorry, carry on.
Is there anyone else before I reply quickly to Councillor St. Pierre as well? So regarding university, that's a really good point. And we intend, and that was outlined actually in our communication strategy, to have a presentation at the University of Waikato for at the environmental planning. Obviously, spatial planning is coming up within the legislation. This is something which is going to be outlined in the curriculum for future planners. So highly of interest to have actually their input as well about what they're learning and what they think this is looking like, and having Waipa as a case study for them will be fantastic as well. Regarding youth employment groups, I suppose that was something that came through the youth groups as well. And with all those subgroups that you actually mentioned, that is climate change versus renewable energy, and how we actually spatial plan for this for the next 30, 50 years, and the youth employment rate and our population change. These are all variables that we need, that I encourage you to actually bring to the conversation for next week at the draft future scenarios, because if we start actually profiling all of those, we know the kind of stakeholders as well, but we need to have first start as well. So please, yes, if there is anything else that you want to kind of discuss, and again, just to kind of keep on track on time here, do send me an email, do send Kirsty an email. I'm happy to actually take that conversation further offline. Now, mentioning the draft scenarios, I really wanted to have a very sharp kind of slide so that we don't actually get too much into the nitty-gritty of this, but just to let you know that the project is actually progressing on that work stream as well. We have established a status quo scenario, which is our BAU, if you want, scenario, which is based on the future-proof and metro spatial plan population projection over the next 30 years. scenarios, and there is some assumptions who have been actually outlined. And out of those, this base scenario, we have actually started thinking of four draft scenarios. And as I said, I don't want to actually go too much into detail right now, because we have actually a workshop was being open to all elected members next Tuesday for us to kind of discuss, and some material will be actually passed around by Friday for you to kind of have a read through about the assumption that we've made, the key variables, which are actually interchanging, and our thought behind why we're assuming this is a possible, plausible scenario over the next 30 and 50 years.
Vanessa,
yes,
I was just surprised that the scenarios all seem to be absolutely within the infrastructure paradigm, I guess. Whereas, you know, I thought the spatial plan was across the four well-beings, and so I thought there'd be other scenarios that might have more focus on like social well-being or environmental well-being or cultural well-being.
So yes, and that's a good point. They are very economically and population growth driven. And because we did assume that, you know, they would be, in those changing terms, they will be our two very macro variables are happening actually there. But when you actually look at the descriptions, there is still those 7 themes that we had outlined before were still coming back. So we have the environment, natural environment. We've got our community facilities. We've got our vibrant communities, where it looks at the economical aspect of what a community is actually made of. We've got cultural and heritage. So these actually appear in the description. But you're right, the working title seems to be very population and economically kind of led, because they are really our macro variables at this stage. That we know of. So, and remember that they are really structured on what's happening as well on the ground. So quite a lot happening with the Southern Links when it comes about pipeline, the urban growth with the NPS, urban development happening as well. This question that we had actually this morning about population growth or no population growth, all those kind of items, you know, we're making the working titles, but the description go much deeper into what the scenarios are and how they actually overarch those 4 well-beings as well. So I'm really looking forward to all of you to kind of look at the description of the scenarios, but we can really get into the nitty-gritty of this. But today was really, you know, with only 30 minutes and quite a bit of delay, was already kind of wanted just to make sure that you're aware this is actually happening, and this is happening next week with material coming to all of you by Friday. Yeah. Anyone?
Great.
Yeah.
Any other questions there for either Kirsty or Vanessa? No. Claire?
Just one other question is about the technical stakeholder advisory group. You've got listed the Waikato Regional Council, but I was interested to know who from the Regional Council or which area, because I'd hope that there'd be someone there that's got expertise in climate change and emissions reduction.
That's a good point. And we haven't actually put names or department to each of those groups yet. We're looking at listing all our key groups that we want to actually get in contact with. Gary Knighton is actually giving us a bit of support there to kind of pinpoint which are the key players, those kind of personnel that we need to kind of get in contact with. But that's a good point. Yes, we will need to have those people who are across all 4 well-beings and the big change that are due to occur. Yeah.
Thanks.
Moving on to the engagement. Sorry. So we had our first 2 ZUI will have occurred on the 27th of October, and last night Mayor Jim was there, attended as well. Last night until 8:30, so that was quite a late night for the team. Look, you know, we had to actually adapt very quickly. The change in alert level, you know, kind of occurred within a few weeks of us engaging with either the internal engagement with council managers and business case writers, and with Mana Whenua and iwi representative. So we had to kind of like change our way, the way that we are going to engage. So I need to kind of say a big thank you to the team who has worked very hard and late sometimes and during weekends at times as well, to kind of come through this so that we can reach those 2 dates and get to those dates that we had actually set previous to the change in alert level. But despite this, you know, being affecting actually the way we initially thought to engage, the results have been probably overwhelming, positively overwhelming. Both Zui have actually come with a lot of positive commitment. I think there is an understanding of what the spatial plan could actually achieve. I don't know if Mary Jim is there like right now, but you know, what we had actually, the discussion that we had last night were extremely positive. We actually started, we featured an editable layer of our GIS viewer last night. So we were testing this with Mana Whenua and see actually how we could work on those because we are being online, and the response was fantastic. So a lot of positive feedback when it comes about what about, you know, knowing what the project can provide, what can it deliver for future strategies and future plans as well. And we also actually are taking a collaborative approach, reflecting our treaty partnership stages to the plan naming and to the plan branding as well. So there is quite a lot of partnership working, which has been initiated from Bozui. And we have a third one coming on the 10th of November. And it is likely now that with a new tool that we featured last night, we will try to have a morning or day workshop so that we can start adding data into our GIS viewer for Mana Whenua. We kind of just to add up to the knowledge that we have. And finally, a slide on the integration workshop that we had with council managers and council business case writers. I just put here one of the whiteboards, one of the virtual whiteboards that we had online with some of the comments that were made during the day. So during that workshop, only 2 hours workshop, we know how they can be actually very time restricted. So we only had 2 hours, but what a good 2 hours. So some really good feedback as to how the community spatial plan can actually support them into the work they are currently delivering or will be delivering in the future. There is still, you know, some reserve on the integration model just to make sure that we are not actually duplicating work that is actually happening or that is planned to happen. But I think what was been, you know, one of the main points is that there is an observation that some synergies needs to be created, and that the plan is actually the spatial plan is the place to create those synergies. So there is more integration work to come. We also actually workshop the draft future scenarios with them, and we received so much feedback on application and intervention and the key variables as well that were kind of like discussed during the workshop. So we're analyzing all of this at this moment and kind of preparing the draft future scenario to make sure that they come into line with what we heard and what we're hearing at this stage. And yeah, more work needs to happen on that part as well before we can have our final draft scenarios. This is me.
Fantastic. Great. Well, thanks for that, Vanessa. Does anybody else? I can't see everybody just at the moment. Have any other questions? Yeah, I've just squished it across. No further questions for either Vanessa or Kirsty. Look, thank you for that. Thank you for the regular updates. I think they're really valuable. Certainly, as I know Liz and I sitting on, and Jim sitting on the that group, you feel mindful of the fact that you want to cast the net a bit wider, and clearly picking up other issues from other people is going to only benefit the process. So, or the results. So, thank you very much for that. I've already emailed you something too, Vanessa. So,
Thank you.
Wonderful.